Are you thinking about building a pickleball court on your personal property? Or maybe going into the business of pickleball by building courts somewhere commercially? If you are, the following video is perfect for you. Hey sports fans, we're here with Brent Poss. He is president of Cortex Construction. They build pickleball courts. So stay tuned. All right, Brent, so pickleball courts. So I bet a lot of us out there are wondering, what's the difference between asphalt and concrete courts?
Sure. So when it comes to court construction, you've got subsurface and you have surface. Asphalt and concrete are subsurfaces. They're below the surface you're playing on top. And so in San Antonio, around this area, a lot of the older courts are asphalt, but a lot of the new construction courts are concrete, they're post-tension concrete, they're longer lasting. Main difference between the two is asphalt doesn't have any reinforcement. It's going to be susceptible to cracks over time because soils move. Even when you compact your soils really well, compact your base really well, you're still going to have movement. With post-tension concrete, you're able to squeeze the concrete together with cables, and that keeps the cracking to a minimum. And then you can have a longer life of your court, and you just resurface as time goes on.
Nice. So as we see at many courts, like they have a concrete barrier like around the courts. Like here, if we look at Fairchild, we can see there's concrete around it. So wouldn't that kind of help with the cracks?
So
and, for like say if it was asphalt.
So the concrete curb typically is to have fence poles and have the strength of the fence poles in concrete, and just to have something to kind of contain the asphalt. But that's not going to do anything for the rigidity of the asphalt itself, because again, there's no steel reinforcement in asphalt. That's why our roads tend to get a lot of cracks and a lot of movement. And then you see the bridges and those that are concrete, they last longer. So it's about the longevity. And so if you're building a new court and you don't want to have constant maintenance, particularly as the cycles of weather change and time goes on, then doing concrete is a much longer lasting choice than asphalt is. One thing that people think that is actually not true is that asphalt is softer on the body than concrete. Certainly when it gets really hot, asphalt tends to get a little bit softer. The thing is, it doesn't really equate to the same when you're playing. You don't really feel it. If it were a really heavy object like a car or something, there'd be a difference. But on your feet playing, there's really not that much of a difference. Of course, your surface can be cushioned too, and a cushioned surface can make a big difference as well.
So if you're building a court out there, and what you mentioned post-tension concrete.
Yes.
And that is like speaking a different language.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
Okay, very simple. So I'll give you the short version of it. So typical concrete has rebar reinforcement. Rebars are set at different intervals, and structurally they help keep that concrete strong. Post-tension cables they serve a similar purpose. Instead of rebar, you have steel cables that are at a larger interval, and they're placed into the concrete when it's poured. And after you pour the concrete, that's why it's called post-tension. You're coming in and you're stressing the cables, meaning you're elongating the cables. And what that does is concrete's going to have shrinkage. It's going to have shrinkage cracks. So when it shrinks, the cables get stressed, meaning it elongates and it squeezes the concrete together. The whole purpose of that is you don't get cracks in your finished surface, your acrylic, because the cracks are so minor and they've got nowhere to go. They're held together under a tremendous amount of compression. So rebar is strong, but rebar does nothing for shrinkage cracks. The concrete's going to shrink, still going to have a crack, and there's really nothing you can do about it. You can fill it, you can surface it, it's going to come back. So post-tension concrete is much better for long term and not having to deal with constant maintenance of your subsurface and your court.
Nice. You mentioned acrylic. Is that a type of material that you can use for let's say a pickleball court, and what are the different type of surfaces that we see out there?
Gotcha. So acrylic is the professional's term of the surface that most people are used to playing when they play pickleball. Call it a paint. It is a paint, but it's more than just a paint. It's got sand mixed in it. It's a specially formulated athletic surface, and that has become the surface that most people like to play their pickleball on. It's the same as a tennis court. People oftentimes started their pickleball play on a converted tennis court. There's nothing that says that you have to play pickleball on an acrylic surface. It's just become the most widely accepted. And with the sand mixture, you can control the speed of play, and it's just the best way to have a consistent measure of how the ball bounces and how it performs when you play.
Nice, nice. All right, Brent. So as a player, for me, I really like the baseline for there to be plenty of room. Also, plenty of room on the sidelines where, like, if I'd want to do an ATP, what is, you know, I don't know the term for that. So shoot.
Okay, sizing of courts is something that gets a little tricky, and it's actually pretty simple. The inner part of pickleball is 20 by 44. We all know that that's the size of the play area. The out of bounds size is where you have the variances. So the 30 by 60 common size gives you 8 feet from the baseline to the end of the court, usually a fence, and then 5 feet on the sides. So the tournament size is now 34 by 64. You get 10 feet from the baseline, you get 7 from the sides.
5 feet on the sidelines. What is 5 feet from the other court?
Oh, sorry. So 5 feet from the sideline to the end of the court, meaning the fence or where the second court begins. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like if you had 30 by 60s next to each other, each one would have 5 feet between them.
Okay.
So that's how that works. And so a tournament size, 34-64, that makes it 10 and 7. And so the ATP stuff, when you have 5 feet and a fence, that makes it pretty tight because a wide shot is going to hit with your paddle a fence oftentimes when there's only 5 feet. Same thing goes for the baseline. We all know that a best serve in pickleball is the one that's deep. If it's on the line and you're a relatively tall guy with long arms and a ball's deep, it's very easy for your paddle to hit the fence at 8 feet. So that extra 2 feet is really important.
So let's go. So we're here at Fairchild, and just to give us an example of those dimensions that you're talking about,
Okay.
60 and 30 and all that other language stuff.
I'm going to assume this is a 30 by 60. Haven't measured it, but it looks like it pretty much is. These courts do not have divider fences between them. So that kind of changes a little bit of the space that you kind of can use when you're playing. Here, there's no fence on the back. So the 8 feet we were talking about, if you have a deep serve, there's nothing to hit back here. So this actually plays like a court that has a larger space with a fence because there's no fence here. That side has a fence, so they've got the 8 feet. So it's a little bit different from one side to the other. But the divider fences in between basically means if you divide fence right in between here, you're going to have 5 feet this way and 5 feet this way. So in an ATP coming wide, you can see that it's hard to hit it with the fence here.
There's going to be like nothing there, no room.
There's not a whole lot of room. So that's why tournament is a 34-64. It gives you 7 and 10 instead of 5 and 8. So it is nice to have that extra space. Now, when you don't have divider fences, you don't have to worry about that. However, we all know that it's not a super great fun time when balls are constantly going on your court when you're playing a match. And so divider fences are nice, but it also can restrict your room a little bit.
Right, right, right. Hey, Brent, another thing, posts, temporary, you know, let's say I'm going to build a court and I'm like, temporary net's fine, it'll do the job.
Yeah.
Versus permanent.
Okay. So the most bang for your buck is a in-ground post system with a net like this. This is the highest quality of net that you can get. And so a lot of the times the portable ones, they're lighter, and so they don't have the same playability to them. They'll hit the tape and they'll just roll over because they're really loose and light. And so to get a portable net or a movable net that performs the way this does, you can absolutely find that. There's several brands that are really good. They're about 3 times the cost, and it's just a lot more expensive. Now, the benefit, obviously, is you can move it out of the way if you want to do something else, but most folks really like to keep their pickleball court to pickleball, which means having a in-ground net, permanent and set, not change, not mess with it, not move it. And so this is the best way to go, in my opinion. They are in sleeves, so if you wanted to do something maintenance-wise, you can take them out, but you don't want to do it on a daily basis because it's a lot of work to get those out, crank the net, get it to the right height and everything. And also, let me talk about net straps real quick.
Yes.
So because tennis courts need a center net strap because it's the height is higher here down to the middle, it's a lot different in tennis. In pickleball, it's only a 2-inch difference from the 36 on the post to the 34 here. So if you have a good net system with a proper tension, it has a natural 2-inch sag. You just don't need the maintenance and the issue with a center net strap. So some people really, really want them, but they're not necessary. And you have more maintenance with the way that you're connecting them in the anchor. So it's a lot of times it's best just to get a good system and don't use one and get it at the proper tension.
And I see that these nets, like you can kick the ball underneath the net.
Yeah.
But some places have the net all the way to the ground.
That's a pickleball phenomenon. Never was it an issue in tennis. Tennis was always to the ground. There's never been tennis nets that go higher. But in pickleball, and I actually am the same way. I like the fact that we can just kick it under, roll it under, and so it's a shorter net. Height's the same, but it's raised off the ground. And that does make it less of an easy way to get things under when you have a center net strap. It's easier to kick under if you don't have one. So yeah, I like the shorty nets.
Right, right. Okay, another question, Brent. Like, I played on a court that's kind of slippery, and you know, so why is that?
Okay, if it's an older court, the odds are the sand that's in the top coat of acrylic has probably all basically been washed out over time with play, because the sand mixed into the acrylic is what gives it its playability, its speed. It's also its grit, and so the type of sand is also important. But if it's an older court, it's typically needing a resurface because it's got paint, but it doesn't have any sand left, so it's real slick. If it's a newer court, they probably didn't put enough sand in their mixture for the acrylic finish, and they probably didn't put the right sand. And so those both can play into it. But for an acrylic court, the grit comes from the sand mixed into the paint.
So if you're out there kind of thinking about doing a court, or you are in the process of doing a court, that surfacing is kind of pretty important.
It's very important, and it is not as easy as people think. And that's a great point, Marty. It's not just, let's go buy some paint from Home Depot, or even paint online that says it's a tennis court paint.
Or my contractor Bob says he can do it in
for sure.
Hey, no problem. It's half the price.
For sure.
Instead of X amount, I can do it for way significantly lower. Who's going to know the difference?
Exactly.
I don't know.
The difference is in the quality of it, the longevity of it, and the playability of it. The name brands, the known brands of acrylic for courts is different than what you find online in the Home Depot and all that. And even the do-it-yourselfers can get some of these better brands, but there's a lot that goes into the application when it comes to preparing the subsurface, making sure it's all done the right way. It's just not that easy, and you can do it if you're a very handy person, but in most cases it's not very good, and it doesn't last, and you're not really saving that much. So
yeah, got it.